This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
Asia's imports of crude oil ticked lower in the first half of 2024 from the same period last year, defying expectations that the top consuming continent would lead global demand growth. Asia imported 27.16 million barrels per day, BPD, of crude in the January to June period, down a modest 130,000 barrels of oil per day from the 27.29 million barrels of oil per day in the same period in 2023, according to data compiled by LSEG Oil Research. The slightly weaker outcome was largely a result of lower arrivals in China, the world's biggest oil importer, with gains by Asia's number 2 buyer India not enough to offset China's softness.
Crude markets have exhibited an increasing disconnect this month between rising spot prices and calendar spreads on the one hand and swelling inventories on the other. But futures markets are forward-looking and traders appear to be anticipating a much tighter supply situation that would underpin the higher prices and spreads over the next few months. While the oil market was oversupplied in the second quarter, OPEC and many analysts are predicting a large deficit in the third, which would reduce inventories sharply.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Dutch and British wholesale gas prices edged higher on Monday, supported by expectations of cooler temperatures in Europe and strong competition with Asia for cargoes of liquefied natural gas, ING. The benchmark front-month contract at the Dutch TTF hub was up 0.55 euros at 34.95 euros per megawatt-hour, MWH, or $11.01 per MMBTU, by 0808 GMT, LSEG data showed. The Dutch day-ahead contract was up 0.75 euros at 34.60 euros per megawatt-hour. In the British market, the front-month contract rose by 1.9 pence to 82.9 pence per therm.
3/4 of the European Union's electricity has been generated by CO2 emissions-free sources so far this year, making it the bloc's greenest power mix to date, industry data showed on Monday. Emissions-free sources produced 74% of EU electricity in January to June, of which 50% was from renewable sources like wind and solar, and 24% from nuclear, Industry Association Eurelectric said. The electricity generation of Europe has never had such a low carbon profile before, Eurelectric Secretary General Christian Ruby told Reuters. Coal produced 9% of EU electricity and gas 13%, the lowest shares for each fossil fuel for the same period in any year to date. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. Copper prices eased in London on Monday on rising inventories, but physical demand in China has been picking up and will likely continue to gain should prices stay relatively stable. 3-month copper on the London Metal Exchange, LME, fell 0.5% to $9,555 per metric ton by 0744 GMT, while the most traded August copper contract on the Shanghai Futures Exchange ended down 0.1% at 78,060 yuan, $10,740.23 a ton. Inventories of copper in LME-approved warehouses climbed to 180,125 tons on June 27, from around 104,000 tons in mid-May.
India's steel and trade ministries are in talks over rising imports, particularly cheap Chinese goods, a government source with direct knowledge of the matter said on Saturday, amid persistent calls for higher tariffs from top producers. India turned net steel importer in the fiscal year that ended in March, and the trend continues with its finished steel imports scaling a 5-year high in April and May, according to provisional government data. India imported 1.1 million metric tons of finished steel between April and May, up 19.8% from a year earlier.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
Consultancy Strategie Grains cut its forecast for all the main oilseed crops in the European Union on Monday after adverse weather in several parts of the bloc. In monthly estimates, Strategie Grains pegged the EU 2024 rapeseed harvest at 17.80 million metric tons, down from 17.94 million in June and 10.6% below last year's harvest. due to lower forecasts in Germany, Romania and the Baltic countries after unfavorable growing conditions during May and June. Sunseed production was revised down to 10.49 million tons from 10.72 million last month, after dry, hot weather in June in Romania raised concerns about the crop condition. That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.